Well, Russia was a key ally of the former Syrian leader Bashar Assad over the last decade, with Russian troops fighting the Islamist rebels alongside the Syrian army. But support for Assad also served a strategic goal for Vladimir Putin. Moscow's two bases in Syria served as a staging point to project military might through the Middle East and Africa. Now Assad's gone, the future of Russia's military presence in Syria looks unclear.
Will they soon only be flying home to Russia? In these archive images, Russian planes are still taking off on their combat mission. From the Khmeimim military base in western Syria onwards, inside and outside the Arab country. Exactly how many is unclear. What is clear? Their numbers and the number of Russian soldiers in Syria have grown over the last 10 years. Khmeimim is one of two outposts with which Moscow wanted to strengthen its influence in the Middle East, and President Vladimir Putin his reputation as a global politician. The other is Tartus on Syria's Mediterranean coast, Russia's only naval base outside the former Soviet Union.
This was a big show to prove that Russia has friends and plays a certain role in world politics.
Moscow has invested a lot of money in both bases and created an entire infrastructure for its army in Syria. Khmeimim especially became an important hub for Russia's air force. Also from here, it's believed, Russian mercenaries have launched their operations in the African countries of Libya, Sudan and the Central African Republic. Those ventures could now also come to an end. A blow to Putin's ability to project power globally, experts say.
This is his biggest loss, a slap in the face.
It's not clear if the Kremlin was surprised by the rapid rebel takeover in Syria, or was possibly involved in a secret deal, as some analysts have surmised. But the evacuation of the Russian military was apparently only started at the last moment, experts say. And that with the help of states with which Moscow doesn't have the easiest of relations. In the meantime, all warships are now believed to have left the Tartus naval base. Whether they will ever return, that also remains uncertain. However, some expect Russia to hold on to its military bases and will therefore try to reach an agreement with Syria's new leaders. Putin seems to recognize this. Even though he has granted Bashar al-Assad asylum in Russia, he has neither commented on Assad's case nor met him in person.
If Moscow doesn't publicly court Assad, and instead hides him somewhere in the storeroom and forgets about him, then there's a chance of normalizing relations with Syria's new rulers.
However, building a relationship is likely to be difficult, as the Kremlin, in support of the dictator Assad, has systematically fought the Syrian rebels for years.
Let's pick up some of those points with Anna Borshchevskaya, who is a senior fellow at the Washington Institute. Welcome to DW. What do you think will happen to those Russian naval bases in Syria?
Well, I think the Russian government is going to try its utmost to keep those bases. And we already see the Russian government taking steps to that end. For example, they have already reached out to the new government, whatever shape it's taking place. We don't really know either. The Russian embassy had flown the flag of Syrian opposition in Syria, and that's also a big indicator. Lastly, Russian mainstream state media had stopped referring to Syrian opposition as terrorists, which is something they've done consistently over the years. So we don't know, but certainly Russia is trying very hard.
And is it clear what this new government thinks of Moscow, given that Moscow backed Assad?
Well, HTS, even before taking over, as the offensive had continued, made fairly moderate statements about Russia. They were more moderate compared to previous statements. That is, they said they're not at war with the Russian people. And these statements suggest that they are looking for they are potentially looking for some kind of a relationship, that they're not ruling it out. So these steps together, both with the Russian government, reportedly already receiving some guarantees for their bases, along with HTS, not coming out with extreme rhetoric, suggests that Russia has a real chance in keeping its bases.
Okay, and despite Assad's removal, Russia does still have powerful friends, allies, and what you might call pragmatic partners across the Middle East.
Absolutely. All across the Middle East, Russia has built these relationships really since Vladimir Putin came to power. Putin presented himself over the years to this region as somebody who could talk to all sides. And we saw this playing out, especially with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, where the Middle East, by and large, reacted at best with ambivalence. And certainly Russia's narrative on the war in Ukraine has resonated in this region.
Right. And so now we have Russia sort of looking at Syria and wondering what happens next. How does that affect Russia's broader regional ambitions?
Well, what happened, at least in the short term, certainly is a clear blow to Vladimir Putin's prestige. And that has potential implications all across the region, as you suggest. One thing is that he's been seen as somebody who stands by his allies and friends, somebody who doesn't give them up. And the fact that he couldn't support Assad at this crucial juncture suggests that he's not the strong man he presented himself to the region to be. The question is that counter-narrative going to take hold, or is the Russian narrative going to take over instead?
Right. And now former President Assad has sought asylum and been granted asylum in Russia. What does that tell us about President Putin's relationship with his former ally?
Well, Putin has been very clear in terms of how he perceived events both in Libya and in Iraq, where he's seen these dictators ousted by the West. He presented himself as somebody who doesn't give up his friends in the same way. And the Kremlin even made a statement to that end, saying that Russia doesn't give up its allies, and therefore they've given Assad asylum, that they weren't just going to presumably, the message they're trying to send is they're not going to let anyone, a mob, take over the way it happened, for example, in Libya. But again, what they're really going to do from here in with him, how they're going to handle this asylum is very much up in the air. So far, of course, it's been very quiet.
Thank you for that, Anna Borshchevskaya, a senior fellow at the Washington Institute.
I want to bring in now our correspondent, Konstantin Eggert. He joins me from Vilnius, Lithuania. Konstantin, it's good to see you. You know, we've talked many times about the dynamics here, the formula of Russian power in Syria. We've also talked about the risks to Russia associated with its ties to Syria. Put the ousting of Assad into that equation.
Well, it just means that simply today there is no Russian power in Syria. As simple as that. The absence of Assad means that Russia doesn't have any kind of political connections that could sustain its influence in the region, or at least in the country, rather. And the fact that the ships allegedly left from Tartus, where I've been before the base expanded to its current form, I mean, I can tell you one thing. If they left, the chance that they're coming back is diminished. And frankly, I think that Putin today will have to speak not so much to the new Syrian leadership, which, I mean, still has to take some kind of more coherent form, but to the, well, at least the current real master of the situation there, and that is the Turkish president, Recep Erdogan. I think it's his yes or no on which the future of the Russian bases now depend.
Explain that to our viewers. Why is that?
Well, because he is the chief sponsor and supporter of the Sunni Syrian rebels, or now government, that have taken power in Damascus. Without Turkish help, that would have been completely impossible. And we've seen a stream of Turkish visitors now coming to Damascus, including people from the security apparatus. For now, Turkey is back in control of Syria, which in a certain way it lost in 1918 with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that this will continue indefinitely, but it's very clear that Erdogan intends to continue to have significant impact in Damascus, and that will definitely have a very significant influence on any decision taken regarding the Russian bases. I do not think, personally, Brent, I do not think that the new Syrian government, whatever it is, will be able to take this decision single-handedly without first consulting Ankara.
And let's assume that Ankara says no. What will that mean for Russia's ability to project power, not only in the Middle East, but I'm also thinking about into Africa?
Well, it will be a severe blow to Russian operations in Libya, where Russia supports one of the warlords, Khalifa Haftar. It will definitely damage Russian supply lines to the Central African Republic, and definitely Russian operations, Russian mercenaries in Sudan will be suddenly left without their main line to supply. So yes, it's going to impact Russian operations in Africa severely. One thing, though, Brent, which I think is worth paying attention to, recently we've seen Ankara, we've seen Turkey reaching out to Khalifa Haftar in Libya. There's a stream of Turkish delegations, high-level visitors, coming to visit him in the last few months, since the beginning of autumn at least. So maybe there is a coincidence now with some kind of convergence of views between Moscow and Ankara on who to support in Libya. And maybe that will be one of the contributing factors for Erdogan to leave the bases in peace. But again, we have to remember that Turkey is a NATO member. They will probably have also to talk to the Americans. So it is still a very, very complicated and uncertain issue for me.
Yeah, fluid for sure. Our correspondent, Konstantin Eggert, joining us tonight from Vilnius. Konstantin, thank you.
Thank you.